Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 63 based on novel. So let's start. Big Brother Lindong. Suru's surprised cry broke the quietness in the mountain forest, while joy filled her young and pretty face. Senior Brother Lindong. The 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace disciples also hurriedly cupped their hands together and greeted him. Lindong was the benefactor of their 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace. Moreover, the reason that they could have their revenge was also entirely because of Lindong. Lindong smiled at them. After which, his eyes turned towards the aloof lady in a white dress. The latter shifted her gaze away when she saw him look at her. The hand that held the sword scabbard gripped with a little more strength as faint green veins appeared on her fair skin. Suru looked at the both of them and laughed. Big Brother Lindong, do you have something to say to senior sister? We'll go ahead first and wait. Suru quietly waved her hand after speaking and led the 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace disciples to walk past Lingqing Xu. A trace of panic was finally revealed in Lingqing Xu's normally clear eyes after seeing that Suru and the others were about to leave. She hurriedly reached out in an attempt to grab Suru. However, the latter playfully dodged her. After which, she waved her hand at Lingqing Xu. Senior sister, there is no need to hurry. We still have time so you can slowly chat. The young lady was already laughing in a lovely voice after her voice faded. She led the disciples from the 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace out of the mountain forest. After which, her laughter gradually became distant. The mood within the forest once again turned to silence after Suru and the rest left. Lingqing Xu remained where she stood. Her graceful and enchanting figure possessed some extremely tempting curves. Her dress was like snow and her fine black hair was loosely tied together. She had an extraordinary demeanor. Although she had initially panicked a little, her mental fortitude was relatively strong, and she very quickly regained her calm. Her expression was as still as the water in an old well. However, her slightly faster than usual breathing partially exposed the current state of her heart. It's not very nice of you to simply leave without saying goodbye, is it? Lindong slowly walked forward amidst this silence as he looked at the woman before him and said, We have already imposed on you for many days. Dao Sect has many internal affairs to deal with. By leaving quietly, we will be able to reduce some of your trouble. Lingqing Xu replied. Is this really the case? Lindong stood in front of Lingqing Xu. His gaze was fixed on her face, a face which appeared extremely beautiful despite being covered by a veil. Suddenly, he sighed and said, It has already been 8 years since we met, right? Both of them had met in the small Great Yang Empire. At that time, she was a pride of the heavens who stood high above, while he was merely a weak young man from a small family, who was struggling through numerous challenging experiences. At that time, he could only look up to Lingqing Xu when he saw her aloof and beautiful face. It was the first time he had met such a beauty, and his heart would naturally beat more rapidly like an ordinary person. However, he was aware of the gap between the both of them. He had to admit that even he felt a little ashamed in his heart when he met Lingqing Xu back then. However, things changed with the passage of time. 8 years later, the former young man was now standing at the peak of this continent. Perhaps only he understood in his heart just how much hardship he had experienced over this period of time. Nevertheless, he had never regretted anything. Ripples involuntarily rose within Lingqing Xu's clear eyes when she heard Lindong's words. She slowly lifted her head and her pretty eyes looked at his young face. 8 years ago, there had still been some immaturity on his face. However, Lindong's eyes remained passionate and stubborn even when her sword had been placed at his throat. After 8 years, our status seemed to have changed. Congratulations, you have surpassed me. Lingqing Xu slightly pursed her red lips. Soon after, she softly mocked herself. Teacher told me that my proud character is akin to a lotus on the tall mountains. However, this is practically an aphrodisiac to men. This is because the thing that a man loves to do the most is to subdue a tall mountain that they cannot reach. As for you, you have been thinking of how to subdue me since the very beginning, right? However, you are indeed very strong. Given your current strength, it will be very easy to subdue me. Lingqing Xu stared at Lindong. Her eyes were slightly red and her face contained a look of self-mockery. How could Lindong understand the emotions in her heart? She was aware of the first impression she had given Lindong. At that time, the searing passion and stubbornness in the latter's eyes made her understand that she had become his target, like a wolf cub looking up at a sunflower on a tall cliff. Hence, he had to overcome all the obstacles in his way and did his best to progress. Many years had passed since then. When they met again, the young man was already very different. Although he had yet to reach a level that could shock her, she began to pay attention to this figure due to the relationship between them. After which, they met in the unique devil region. When they were at the Supreme Purity Celestial Pond, ripples finally emerged in her usually calm heart. The blood-soaked figure's valiant struggle during the earth-shaking fight at Unique Devil City had caused her heart to shiver a little. However, she managed to suppress it with the extraordinary strength of her heart. She ultimately ended up as an onlooker whose heart was beating the most rapidly, and did not lend him a helping hand. It was not because she did not wish to, but because she believed that he would not simply fail in such a manner. She believed that he would be truly powerful the next time he returned to the Eastern Xian region. Reality had turned out exactly as she had envisioned. However, when he truly stood in front of her in an incomparably dazzling manner, she began to feel that he was somewhat foreign. The wolf cub from back then had finally arrived in front of the sunflower atop the tall cliff. However, this was merely a kind of subjugation. Perhaps, he would never have thought that the girl from back then, who was as high up and untouchable as a fairy in his eyes back then, would unknowingly use such an undetectable method to pay attention to his once lowly self. She had never uttered his name even when her teacher questioned her incessantly. Even though she was aware that he did not have any status, she mysteriously headed to the small Great Yang Empire after he left and paid her respects to his parents in a gentle manner that she had never shown before. Even though she was aware that he did not lack her attention, she still quietly remained in Dao Sect until he got through his crisis, before she finally left in a silent manner. She was aware of Ying Huan. Back then in Unique Devil City, she had witnessed what this girl had done for him. The latter dared to love and hate. This character caused Lingqing Xu to be a little envious. However, the two of them were ultimately different. Lingqing Xu was a lotus flower that kept to herself, hiding everything deep within her aloof heart that no one could touch. Perhaps it was because of this that Lindong ultimately had the mentality of trying to subdue her as opposed to the pure feelings that she wished for. Lindong was startled as he looked at the red-eyed Lingqing Xu before him. At this moment, Lingqing Xu was displaying a weakness that he had never witnessed before. The outer shell-like aloofness and indifference seemed to have finally completely melted away, and he could now sense the waves surging within the latter's heart. Lindong was quiet. A moment later, he finally slowly extended his hand in an attempt to wipe off the tears on her face. However, she lightly dodged him and wiped them off herself. Her expression once again became indifferent. It was as if the earlier scene had been an illusion. It is not that I wish to subdue. My thought process was rather simple in the past. It was to let you look at me in a different light. I only wished to prove that your opinion of me in the past was wrong. Lindong was quiet for a moment, before he softly sighed. His tone was gentle. Lingqing Xu turned her head slightly, but did not look at him. I was also aware of the gap between us back then. Even though such a thing had happened, I also understood that I was a mere toad lusting after the meat of a swan. However, a lowly toad like myself did have a little ambition. I hoped that when I could finally stand in front of you again, I would be able to face you directly instead of looking up at you like back then. At that time, I only wished to stand before you as an equal. Lindong slowly said. Lingqing Xu's delicate figure shook slightly upon hearing Lindong's words. After which, she slowly turned her head and looked at Lindong. At this moment, a smile had already emerged on the latter's face. However, this smile was filled with fatigue. He had similarly strived for many years for that simple desire. Lingqing Xu gently clenched her hands. I say all this only because I hope to let you know that I am not like what you have imagined. wanting to completely subdue you and enjoy the perverted joy from such a subjugation. I merely wish to be your equal. Do you understand? Otherwise, I would not have immediately hurried to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace the moment I heard that there was trouble. Lindong said in a hoarse voice. A long time ago, he really did wish to surpass her. However, did he really not feel any other emotions besides that? This was something that he was well aware of in his heart. Lingqing Xu gently bit her red lips. A long while later, she lightly nodded. A faint acknowledgement was heard from under the veil. Next, the both of them became silent. However, this silence no longer had the stifling feeling that was present at the start. Lingqing Xu stood there in an elegant manner as she lowered her head and looked at the long sword she was holding in her hand. Although her demeanor was as aloof as before, there was an additional trace of liveliness compared to before. Giggles suddenly sounded from afar, causing Lingqing Xu to be startled. She lifted her head to look at Lindong and said, I am going to return to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace. Oh. Lindong was dazed. Has Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace been rebuilt? Everything should be okay, right? Yes. Although teacher died, the many elders in the palace had fortunately only sustained severe injuries, and are now mostly recovered. However, I am now the new palace master. Lingqing Xu nodded and said. Lindong sighed softly in his heart. Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace had undergone a drastic change during this period of time. The palace was destroyed and the palace master had died. All responsibility had fallen onto Lingqing Xu. However, she had never shown any weakness or complaint, but instead quietly shouldered these burdens. At times, this strength really made one's heart ache. Take this jade. Shatter it if you encounter any problems and I will immediately hurry over. Lindong handed over a piece of black jade and said. Lingqing Xu hesitated for a moment. Finally, she received it and gently held it in her hand. A faint warmth emanated from it. In that case, I will take my leave. Lingqing Xu glanced at Lindong and said. Lindong smiled and nodded. However, Lingqing Xu had only taken 2 steps when a voice suddenly sounded from behind. Wait. He still wishes to ask you why you possess the fluctuation of the symbol ancestor. This sudden voice caused Lingqing Xu to be stunned. After which, she turned around, only to see a light figure drifting out from Lindong's body. Next, Lindong's face turned completely black. Lindong's face was black as he looked at Yang, who had come out as he pleased. Lindong grabbed at the latter as he gritted his teeth and said, Yang, you asshole. Yang dodged Lindong's hand and helplessly said, You are really as stubborn as a rock. If I don't say anything, you would never have asked. You meddle far too much. Lindong clenched his teeth together in anger. He attempted to grab Yang a couple of times, but a sheathed longsword suddenly swept in front of him and stopped Lindong just as he was about to grab Yang. Lingqing Xu glanced at Lindong. After which, she looked at Yang, frowned and asked, Who are you? I am the ancestral stone spirit. I have always been in this fellow's body. Yang's eyes paused on Lingqing Xu. His gaze looked straight at her. This was not due to Lingqing Xu's appearance. Instead, it was due to the extremely faint but unforgettable ripple from her that only he could detect. Hey, where are you looking? Lindong stepped forward and blocked Yang's gaze. His expression was unfriendly. No matter how beautiful a woman is, she would be nothing but a skeleton in my eyes. What are you being jealous for? Yang glanced at Lindong and rudely said. Lindong felt his face flush and glared at Yang. Lingqing Xu was a little amused as she glanced at Lindong. After which, she asked Yang, Why do you know that I have a ripple similar to the symbol ancestor? The symbol ancestor is my first owner. I am naturally extremely familiar with this fluctuation. Yang smiled and said. Only then did Lingqing Xu lightly nod. She tilted her head slightly as her clear eyes stared at Lindong and asked, Do you wish to know why I have such a fluctuation? Lindong hesitated for a moment under Lingqing Xu's gaze, which seemed to be able to look straight into his heart. He was ultimately unable to give a direct answer. This caused Yang to be inwardly irritated. This little fellow was usually extremely decisive. Yet, he became extremely hesitant when it came to these two women. Was romance really so troublesome? Although Lindong did not reply her directly, Lingqing Xu was extremely intelligent. She slowly retracted her gaze and was quiet for a moment. Finally, she said, "Every palace master and the successor of our 9 Heavens Supreme Purity Palace has practiced a mysterious martial art called the zenith sensing art since young. This martial art does not have any combat capabilities and cannot be used to battle our enemies. However, it is compulsory." Zenith sensing art? Lindong and Yang were stunned. They exchanged a glance. It was clear that neither of them had heard of it. This martial art is extremely profound. Countless predecessors of our 9 Heavens Supreme Purity Palace have been unable to attain any progress despite using their entire life to study it. However, due to the rules of the palace, we have never given up. Moreover, practicing this martial art requires one to be pure of mind and body. Hence, the practitioner must be a virgin. Otherwise, the art will be broken. An astringent expression flashed across Lingqing Xu's eyes when she spoke until this point. Her eyes glanced at Lindong, causing the latter's back to be covered in perspiration. This meant that one time back then had ridiculously destroyed 10 years of Lingqing Xu's bitter training. No wonder she hated him to the point of wanting to kill him back then. But now, you seem to have successfully mastered it. Yang looked at Lingqing Xu and asked in surprise. Lingqing Xu nodded slightly and said, "Back then, teacher was exceptionally furious when she learned that all my hard work was ruined. However, in the subsequent 8 years, my proficiency in the zenith sensing art grew at an increasing rate. Some time ago, teacher used her life and the help of many elders to allow me to successfully master the zenith sensing art. It was also at that time that my body gained a trace of the so-called fluctuation similar to that of the symbol ancestor. This power is indeed very formidable. Although I am only at the samsara stage, if I was to use this power, it will be difficult even for those samsara stage experts who have touched reincarnation to stop me." Yang nodded. He had saw Lingqing Xu break open the Devil Feast world, which the Qian Yuanzi had created from their self-destruction, with a slash. Such power might appear inconspicuous, but it was extremely frightening. Yang looked at Lindong. Seeing that Lindong did not react, he involuntarily coughed dryly in his resentful manner. Where had the usual quick-wittedness of this fellow gone? A powerless feeling swept over Lindong after hearing the dry cough. He was naturally aware of what Yang wanted him to do. However, damn it, how could he bring himself to utter those words? Therefore, he could only choose to ignore Yang's reminder. He laughed dryly and said, "It is already quite late. Su Ru and the others are still waiting for you." Lingqing Xu glanced indifferently at Lindong. She had clearly seen the expressions of Lindong and Yang. Given her intelligence, she was naturally aware of the thoughts in their hearts. "Then I shall take my leave." Lingqing Xu nodded after seeing that Lindong had nothing to say. After which, she turned around decisively. Her graceful figure revealed her tempting curves in front of Lindong's eyes. "You are really far too disappointing." Yang involuntarily scolded when he saw that Lingqing Xu was about to leave. Lindong felt a lot more relaxed in his heart as he watched Lingqing Xu's figure. He waved his hand towards Yang and laughed, "Why do you need to be so persistent? There are countless paths in this world. I do not believe that there are no other methods to catch up with the Ice Master. Let's go. We should also return." Lindong was just about to turn around as he spoke. However, he was suddenly stopped by Yang. After which, the latter pointed to their front. Lindong raised his head and saw that Lingqing Xu had stopped. Soon after, she slowly turned around. The sunlight shone on her, emphasizing her enchanting curves. Her long eyelashes moved slightly and the expression in her eyes changed. Finally, she stared at Lindong and asked, "Do you wish to learn this zenith sensing art?" Lindong blankly stared at Lingqing Xu. In the end, he let out a long sigh. If he kept being unreasonable, it would not fit his character at all. He immediately nodded and obediently answered, yes. Lingqing Xu remained where she stood. She gently bit her red lips as she looked at Lindong, while her hand gripped her sword scabbard a little harder. There was a struggle in her eyes. This continued for a long time, before she finally sighed softly in her heart as if she had come to a decision. Will you be going outside during this period of time? Lingqing Xu asked. Lindong was stunned by these rather strange words. After which, he nodded and said, I will be heading to the northern Xian region to bring Qingtan back. In that case, I will accompany you. Lingqing Xu thought for a moment and said. Lindong was stunned. Can you really? You are after all the palace master of Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. There are many elders in the palace. It doesn't matter if I leave for some time. Lingqing Xu had an indifferent expression. Her clear eyes looked at Lindong as she said, but you must promise me something. What is it? Do not ask me anything related to the zenith sensing art from now onwards. If I believe that the time is right, I will try and see if I can let you learn it. Lingqing Xu said in a faint voice. This is a tightly guarded secret of your Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. Will it? Lindong hesitated for a moment before speaking. I am currently the palace master of Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. Moreover, you are a big benefactor of our Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. It is likely that the other elders will not object. Lindong looked at Lingqing Xu's extremely calm expression. Finally, he lightly nodded and said, all right, I promise. Other than that, Lindong paused. Soon after, he gritted his teeth slightly and said, do you know why I want to learn this zenith sensing art from you? Lingqing Xu's clear eyes stared at Lindong. She softly said, everyone has to make their own choices. You have chosen to look for me, and I have chosen to teach you that zenith sensing art. I do not need a reason. I will ask Suru and the others to go ahead and return. Lingqing Xu did not wait for Lindong's reply after she finished speaking. She turned around and left the forest. Lindong felt a little stunned as he looked at her figure. In the end, he let out a long sigh. Did she intend to make him feel terribly guilty? You are really extremely lucky. It is fortunate that it is you. Otherwise, we can forget about obtaining this zenith sensing art. Yang watched from the side as he sighed. That zenith sensing art was clearly a tightly guarded secret of Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. Even if someone else had done a great favor for Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace, they would definitely not take out something of such importance. Moreover, Lingqing Xu was extremely intelligent. She had clearly guessed the reason Lindong wanted to learn that zenith sensing art. However, she did not comment about it. This girl really likes to silently endure and stubbornly keep everything to herself. This feeling was just like drinking water. Only the person would know if it is hot or cold. The most difficult thing to repay in this world is the debt of feelings. Yang patted Lindong's shoulder and said. Lindong was silent. His heart was plagued by complicated emotions. After which, he walked forward and coincidentally saw Lingqing Xu saying something to Suru. The latter held the former's hand with a bright smile. From Lindong's angle, he could see the tips of Lingqing Xu's tender ears turn red. Big brother Lindong, we will be leaving senior sister in your care. Please help us take good care of her. Suru waved her small hand towards Lindong and said in a lovely voice. However, Lingqing Xu's sword scabbard knocked onto her forehead with embarrassed anger. This caused some pain to appear on Suru's small face. The group of young ladies from Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace joked around and teased Lingqing Xu for a while. Finally, their lovely laughter gradually became distant. The clear laughter continued to echo in the mountain forest. Lingqing Xu watched them leave. Only then did she turn around and arrive in front of Lindong. She asked, when do you plan to leave? Tomorrow. I will return first to notify them. Lindong pondered for a while. Now that there were no problems in Dao Sect, he should hurry and head to the northern Xian region to bring Qingtan back. Okay. Lingqing Xu nodded gently and did not speak any further. Lindong turned around after seeing this and the both of them returned to Dao Sect. They coincidentally met Ying Xiaoxiao after returning to Dao Sect. The latter's eyes involuntarily became somewhat strange when she saw the both of them. However, she did not comment and Lindong did not explain anything either. He merely asked Ying Xiaoxiao to arrange for Lingqing Xu's accommodation, before heading straight to Ying Xuanzi to inform the latter that he had to leave for the time being. Ying Xuanzi was a little surprised, but did not voice any objection. He only instructed Lindong to be careful. After all, the world was currently not at peace. After which, Lindong headed to the back mountain and informed Ying Huanhuan. The latter agreed when she heard that Lindong was planning to bring Qingtan back. She was acquainted with Qingtan and the both of them had a relatively good relationship. She wanted to follow Lindong but her current condition was unsuitable. Hence, she could only regretfully remain in Dao Sect. Lindong looked at a distant mountain after coming out from the back mountain. He pondered a little, before instructing a disciple to bring 2 jars of good wine. After which, he carried it to that particular mountain. On the mountain peak, he saw a red-haired figure seated on a rock. A man wearing golden robes was sitting quietly on a cliff. Even from a great distance away, it was possible to detect the ancient ripples radiating from his body. Lindong slowly walked over. Meanwhile, that figure had also detected his presence, as he immediately turned around and glanced at Lindong with a calm expression. Lindong sat down on a rock beside the Flame Master. After which, he swung the wine jars in his hand before he tossed one over. The Flame Master caught it and played around with it, before he faintly asked, "Why? Are you no longer upset? What is the point?" Lindong sighed softly, while he looked at the mountain behind Dao Sect. Currently, cold aura was being slowly emitted from that place, causing that entire mountain top to become covered with frost. The Flame Master followed his line of sight and looked over as well. Then, he was silent for a moment before he said, "I acted behind your backs this time around, and it was indeed a shameful deed and perhaps even a little unfair to you and Ying Huanhuan. Hence, it is only natural for you to be upset. However, even if I could go back in time, I would do it again." During the ancient Great World War, Teacher ignited his reincarnation in order to seal the crack between the planes. Only then did he end that calamity. However, those Yimo were indeed extremely difficult to deal with. Although we tried our best to kill all of them, many of them still managed to escape. Moreover, there were a few powerful Yimo that were able to match up to us and force us into a situation whereby we would both be injured. In fact, even though the Yimo were ultimately forced to retreat, we were also forced to enter a slumber or to enter reincarnation. Currently, Teacher is no longer around. If the world descends into chaos once again, little junior sister is our only hope. After all, Teacher once said that little junior sister has the highest chance of reaching his level. Therefore, all of us are willing to sacrifice our lives to protect her. Even though we were all seriously injured, we did not object at all when Teacher chose to use his final strength to protect her through reincarnation. Lindong remained silent. After all, he already knew about this. This was also the reason why the Devouring Master ended up igniting his own reincarnation. Otherwise, that extremely talented and blessed genius would not have died. The countless lives in this world will only be saved if little junior sister is able to reach Teacher's cultivation level. This is the only way we can stop the Yimo's invasion. The Flame Master opened his jar of wine before he took a big mouthful and said faintly, "In order for this to happen, we will use all our strength and even any underhanded means." Lindong remained silent. Following which, he took a mouthful of that pungent and intense wine. Then, he shook his wine jar and said, "You people have noble intentions. In this regard, I am indeed lacking compared to you. However, this is not a competition that I wish to be a part of. I have fought my way and slowly climbed up from a small place, and I have also been through a lot. The reason why I am training and working hard is simple. I only want to protect those whom I wish to protect. As long as I can prevent them from getting hurt, I don't care even if I end up riddled with injuries. Perhaps you will say that the Yimo's invasion is an extremely severe matter that affects the entire world. Therefore, should we lose the war, there is no way that I will be able to protect those that I care about. That is indeed true. Therefore, in order to protect them, I will not hesitate even if I have to fight to the death with the Yimo. Honestly speaking, I have been fighting with the Yimo through various means over the years. However, there is ultimately a difference. I am not asking her to give up on that duty. It's just that I was thinking that perhaps I will be able to shoulder that burden. In that way, she will no longer have to carry that heavy burden which could cause one to collapse. With a self-mocking laughter, Lindong continued, I never thought that I was qualified to become the savior of the world. I am just an ordinary person, someone who will act selfishly and impulsively at times. However, I am willing to pay any price to protect those that I care about. The Flame Master looked at Lindong, who was mocking himself. It was a long while later before he shook his head gently and said, only she can shoulder that burden. No one else can do it. Why? Is it because of what the symbol ancestor once said? Lindong smiled. Under the illumination of the sunlight, he looked exceptionally determined. After which, he said, there are no absolutes in this world. Even if the odds are stacked against me, I will never give up. The Flame Master gently swayed his wine jar. Meanwhile, his expression suddenly became a little complicated as he looked at Lindong and said, although in my opinion, I feel that your mindset is a little naive, I admire your courage. Once upon a time, I had the same mindset as well. After all, I fancied her and also wanted to help her to shoulder that responsibility. However, I eventually gave up. The Flame Master had a somewhat bitter expression at this moment. He softly said, ultimately, I chose to give up in the face of such responsibility. This was because I felt that I did not possess the ability to shoulder it. Frankly, it is because I lack the courage. Everything else is merely an excuse. At times, I do admire your perseverance. Though your actions may seem reckless, at the very least, it leaves you with no regrets. Lindong looked at the Flame Master's bitter expression before he gradually descended into silence. Then, he silently gulped 2 mouthfuls of wine from the wine jar in his hand. The bitter expression on the Flame Master's face quickly disappeared. Then, he glanced at Lindong and said, ultimately, our desires will not change the situation. However, since you are so confident in yourself, you should use your own abilities to prove it. We only have one opportunity and it will be reserved for little junior sister. As of now, you are not qualified to compete with her. Lindong held onto his jar of wine. He knew that it was currently impossible for him to convince the Flame Master. After all, the two of them had completely opposite standpoints. He wanted to protect Jing Huan, while the Flame Master wanted to awaken the Ice Master. However, the both of them could not coexist. Ultimately, a decision would have to be made. In order to change their opinion, Lindong must prove to the Flame Master and the rest that he could surpass the Ice Master. However, this path was destined to be a treacherous one. Are you heading out? The Flame Master suddenly asked. I will be going to the northern Xian region. Go? I will be standing guard. Moreover, as long as she is here, I will not stand by idly if anything occurs. The Flame Master said. Thank you very much. Lindong nodded and said. This is my duty. I will do it even if you didn't ask. The Flame Master shook his head. Then, he stood up and looked at the back mountain, which was now permeated by cold aura. Following which, a gentle expression surfaced in his eyes as he said, actually, I really want to thank you. It has been so many years since I saw little junior sister smile like that. She has been eerily calm since young and it was as though she never had any emotions. After looking at her smile, I can understand why you would want to do everything in your power to protect her. Although I can empathize with you, reality is cruel. The Flame Master waved his hand and sighed, go. Though we had a long chat, after my actual body arrives, I will still do what needs to be done. At that time, perhaps fighting will be the most direct way. Lindong smiled. He nodded heavily and said, being able to fight with you ancient masters is my honor. However, even if I have to risk my life, I will not allow any of you to snatch her away. You got guts. I look forward to that day. The Flame Master turned around. Then, he shook his wine jar at Lindong. When Lindong saw his action, he immediately laughed out loud. Following which, he finished his jar of wine, before he tossed it aside and left with a loud laugh. The Flame Master looked at Lindong's back, which was disappearing into the distance. Then, he sighed softly and muttered, "Hopefully, you will continue to persevere on like this. In that case, you will not have any regrets even if you fail." Suddenly, a stream of cold aura surged onto the cliff. The Flame Master gently tilted his head, before he looked at that alluring figure, who had suddenly appeared on the rock that Lindong was previously seated on. However, he did not speak. All he did was to drink from the wine jar in his hand. Ying Huan did not speak to him as well. Instead, her eyes looked at Lindong's distant figure, before she gently picked up the wine jar that he had tossed aside. Then, she lifted her snow-white neck before she gently sipped the remaining wine. "With such a fool protecting you, it's no wonder you refuse to awaken." The Flame Master finally sighed. He stared at Ying Huan and smiled bitterly. "However, you should be aware that ultimately nothing will change. He cannot shoulder that burden. Moreover, do you wish for him to experience such hardship?" Ying Huan did not reply him. Instead, she gently folded her long legs and hugged her knees with her arms. Lowering her head, she buried her head between her knees. Meanwhile, her icy blue hair was scattered like a blooming ice lotus. Currently, it looked like her delicate figure was trembling gently. Soon after, icy cold tears fell. Those tears turned into ice flowers the moment they landed on the ground. Finally, a hoarse voice was emitted from beneath her long icy blue hair. "I know. I will accept everything that belongs to me. However, I just really like him so much." The Flame Master looked at that figure, which continued to tremble. Even with his mental fortitude, he could still feel a slight bitter sensation churning within. However, he could only sit at the side and watch quietly. Just like many years ago, laughing at how helpless he was. The setting sun shrouded the cliff. Snowflakes formed before they slowly drifted downwards. It was a tragic sight to behold. The next day, even before the first ray of sunlight touched the ground, Lindong had already left. He did not alert anyone. However, by the time he arrived at the entrance of Dao Sect, there was already a lovely figure wearing a white dress quietly standing there. "You are early." Lindong smiled towards Lingqing Xu and said, "It is going to be a long journey to the northern Xian region. The sooner we leave, the sooner we can come back." Lingqing Xu was still holding a longsword in her hand. Meanwhile, her clear bright eyes looked at Lindong as she said, "Let's go." Lindong nodded. After which, he turned around and glanced at Dao Sect, before he sighed. After which, without hesitation, he waved his hand and turned around in a free and easy manner. Finally, his body moved before he transformed into a ray of light and shot across the sky. When she saw this, Lingqing Xu also transformed into a ray of light and quickly followed behind. As the two of them left, there seemed to be a figure looking at them from afar at the back mountain of Dao Sect, which was now permeated by cold aura. That figure was just like a stone statue as she did not move for a very long time. Then, a cold aura surged and covered her entire body. This video will end here.